Welcome back, class. This is your Catia mentor, and today we're going to go over the control points command in Freestyle Workbench or Freestyle Shape Design app. Alright, so let's start by creating a geometric set. And OK. So we'll place our surfaces in this geometric set. And let's start by creating a patch. So let's go to Creation, Patch. I'm just going to click anywhere in space, click. And notice it's creating a surface on the XY plane. Now click and OK, and it generates a surface. If I right click on the compass or robot, I want you to notice that the XY is the privileged plane. If I go YZ, notice how now it's vertical with respect to the YZ plane. So if I was to create a second patch, it'll place it on the YZ plane, as you can see. Alright, notice that the two surfaces we created, they both have the red lightning bolt, similar to isolated surfaces or isolated part or solid, I should say, or isolated line or wireframe. So this is considered non-smart. It doesn't have a history. In generative shape design or generative wireframe and surfaces, typically you have a history of how the surface was generated, similar to a family tree. So here the surfaces have no history, no knowledge of self. Alright, let me first get rid of this second surface before I go into the control points command. And let me also change the color of the surface. Right click properties. Want a dark background so we can see the control points once we go into the command. So let's go to addition. And let me make the XY plane the privileged plane, the default one. So you can see I have XZ as an option also, YZ, and I'll go back to the default XY plane. There we have it. Alright, so I'm going to select my surface and I'm going to add control points so I can shape the surface. Okay, so think of yourself as an artist. You're going to be shaping a surface. Imagine you're creating a pottery. Maybe you're shaping something out of clay. Maybe you're creating a statue out of marbles. Think of yourself as an artist, or I should say artiste. Alright, so this will give us our mesh, the green mesh that we see. So we can increase the number of columns and rows by simply clicking on it. Or we can right click and go to the desired quantity. And by the way, we have these letter F's for the edges. We'll come back to this in a few minutes. Alright, so let's start by looking at our filters. So the first filter only allows us to pick points on our mesh. So I'm going to select it. So if I hover over it, you can see points only. And then let's go with the normal to robot support. Let's start with this one, then I'll work our way across the other options. Alright, so if I hover over the surface, notice only points are showing in green. So it's only allowing us to pick points, right, because of our filter. I'm going to pull on this point and it'll turn blue when I select it. And I want you to notice that it pulls normal to the XY plane, our privileged plane. So it's only going in the Z direction. I can also pull on an entire wire. So if I go to mesh only, so if I was to select this one, notice how it turns blue. How about we select this one? All right, so let's go back to points only. One thing I do want you to notice is the last wire we pulled on, all the points are blue. It's hard to see, but all these points that I'm going to are blue. So even though I have points only, it has those pre-selected from our previous move. Let me click in space, or I should say deselect all points, deselect. So this one will deselect points. Notice they all turn green. This one will select all points. They all turn blue. I'm going to deselect. And I'm going to pull on one point only. One point only. All right, so let's hit undo a few times. Go back to the flat surface. So this is just a quick introduction to this command. Let's look at the other options. So mesh lines. So mesh lines will only pull in the direction of the wire. So I'm going to zoom in. So if I was to pull on this point, it's either going to pull in the direction of this wire or in the direction of this wire. So I'm going to pull on it. Notice the green arrows are always pointing to one of the points that creates that wire. So I can pull in this direction. Notice it's going towards this point. I can pull towards this point, and the third option will pull towards that point. So it's always following the wire. Let me go back to normal. So I'm going to go back to normal. So it'll pull in the Z direction, normal to the XY privilege plane. So if I go back to mesh lines, notice I can pull in this direction. As you can see, I can pull in this direction towards that point that creates that mesh line. And I can also pull in this direction towards this point. Okay, so that's mesh lines. All right, the next option will pull normal to the surface. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this one. Let me deselect any points. Okay, so I'm going to grab this point. Notice how it's going to pull normal to the surface at that point. So if I pull on it and let go of the mouse, notice now the normal has changed. So if I go back to the same point, normal has changed. If I let go, now it's normal to its new position. Let me go ahead and pull on a different point. I'll pull on this one. I let go of the mouse. Notice how the normal has changed. So it'll go normal to the new position of the surface every time you let go of the mouse. There it is, let go. And the normal changes direction. It'll always stay normal to the surface. All right, so that's normal. Let's go ahead and pull on a wireframe. Let's go to mesh only. Let's grab a different mesh. All right, so let me go ahead and hit undo a few times. Go back to the flat surface. All right, so let's go ahead and pick robot plane. So this will always pull in the XY plane direction or parallel to that plane. So notice it's only allowing us to move or translate about the XY plane. So if I was to pull on this, let me look at it from the side. You can see it stays flat. So we're only pulling in the X or Y plane, or I should say on the XY plane. Let me deselect and pick points. Deselect. So any point I pick will pull along the XY plane or parallel to it. So notice we've been staying flat with respect to the XY plane. But what if I go back to normal? Go back to normal and go out of plane. There it is. And I go back to robot plane. So XY plane is the privileged plane. So it's only going to pull parallel to our privileged XY plane. All right, so let me hit undo a few times. All right, the next one will pull tangent to the surface. So if I click on that one, let me go to points only, deselect any possible points I have selected. So deselected all the points, and I'm going to pull normal to the surface. And it's also following the wire mesh. Let me go back to, sorry, I meant to say tangent. So I've been saying normal, I meant to say tangent. So this is tangent to the surface. You can also pull on the wireframe, so tangent to the surface. Well, it's a flat surface, so it's only going in one direction, staying parallel to the XY plane. So let's go back to normal. And right now I'm pulling on the mesh. So now let's see what happens when I go back to tangent. And if I pull tangent, let me go to points only. Let me deselect any potential points I have selected. So deselect, and now let me pick a new point. I want you to notice it goes tangent to the surface. And you can also pick the wireframe. Let me pull from the side. So it's going tangent to the surface. All right, so this one here will pull parallel to your computer monitor or your laptop screen. All right, so let me go with points. Let me first go to points only, deselect any potential points that are selected, and pull parallel to screen. Notice it stays parallel to screen. If I was to rotate the part or the surface, rotate it, notice it always pulls parallel to the screen. Not sure when you may want to use this, but it's there, it's available. All right, so let me hit undo a few times. Go back to the flat surface. All right, so before I move on to these other options, I want to now go back to the edges. Notice how this says F. So if I right click, that means free continuity. So it tells us that the edge is free to move in any direction. You can move out of plane from the XY. So if I wanted to fix this edge so it doesn't move, I can go, hey, let's go to G0 point continuity. Let's do the same thing to the opposite side. Change it, right click to G0 point continuity. So if I was to pull on all points, so this will select all points. If I was to pull on all points, and I'm going to go in the Z direction, normal to the XY privilege plane. Let's see what happens when I pull on it. Notice how the G0 sides are fixed. So it's fixed to its original position when it was flat. So G0 guarantees point continuity between the original flat surface and the new surface. So G0 continuity. Let me hit undo. If I was to go back to F, so now all of them are back to F, and I select points again and pull on it, it's going to pull on the entire surface. Okay, let me hit undo. All right, so let's increase from G0 or from F to G0 to G1, tangent continuity. Let's do it on the same two opposite sides. G1, tangent continuity. Let's see what happens when I select all points again and go in the Z direction. Notice now that the surface, our new surface, will stay at G0 point continuity with respect to the original flat surface and stay tangent to the original flat surface. Okay, so we have tangency between our new surface and the original flat surface. Okay, so that's G1, tangent continuity. If we want to put more restrictions on it, let's go back to undo and let's increase it from G1 to G2, curvature continuity on both sides. And once again, let's select all points and pull in the Z direction. Notice it's a lot harder to move this portion of the surface. Okay, and the reason is because now we have G2 continuity on both sides. So not only do we have G0 point continuity between the two surfaces and G1 tangent continuity, now we have G2 curvature continuity, which guarantees that the radius as you exit the flat surface is equal to the radius as you enter your new surface or generate your new surface. Okay, so that's G2. Let's undo. And finally, let's get to G3. G3 continuity. So this guarantees that also the acceleration, or I should say the rate of change on the radius as you exit and enter the next surface are equal. So if I was to pull on this again, it's not allowing me to. There's too many restrictions. So what I need to do is I need more points. So I'm going to increase the number of points. Or I should say rows and columns. Let me go up to, let's see, 12. See if that allows me to pull on these points and maintaining a G3 continuity on both edges. Okay, so let's pull again. Select all points. Let's see what happens when I pull on this. Okay, so now we're able to pull on our surface. So G3, once again, guarantees a G0 point continuity between the two surfaces, a G1 tangent continuity between the two surfaces, G2, so the radius as you exit the flat surface equals the radius as you enter the next surface, the new one, and also the rate of change of the radius as you exit the flat surface equals the rate of change as you enter the next surface, our new one. Okay, so that's surface continuity. I do have a separate video on that on the channel if you want to check it out. All right, let's hit undo a few times. Let's deselect the points, deselect, and I'm going to change these back to F, free continuity. So all four edges are set back to F. All right, so let's take a look at diffusion. Let's see what happens when I click on diffusion. Let me first deselect any points. I'm going to pull on one point and I'll go normal to the XY plane, our privileged plane. Okay, no big deal, nothing happened. By having this on, nothing happened. Let's see, let's go back, undo. Let's say this time I pick on the mesh only. So I'm going to pick on this back edge. Notice how it turns blue. Okay, no big deal. Looks the same. Let me undo. And let me go ahead and this time go with points and mesh. Alright, so I'm going to pick on the back edge. Instead of going for the point, I'm going to go inward slightly and then pull on it. And not much of a difference. Let's hit undo again. And this time I'm going to pick linear law. So let's see what happens. So instead of going straight for the point, I'm going to go a little bit inward. I'm going to pull on it and see what happens. Notice how I was able to pull on this mesh and all the points stayed in line. So that's linear law. Let me pull on a different one. Let me pull on this one. But this time I'm going to pull somewhere in the middle and let's see what happens. Let me hit undo on this one. So I didn't grab the mesh, I grabbed the point. So let me zoom in a little bit. And I'm going to pick in between the points. And here we go. Okay, now it worked. Okay, so notice that the points stay in line. So I grab the mesh from here and these points stay in line. And these points are collinear. Okay, let me hit undo. Alright, so now we're going to turn on the cross diffusion. We'll make it linear law, similar to the diffusion. Okay, let's see what happens when I have both selected. Linear law for diffusion, linear law for cross diffusion. So I'm going to aim for the front edge away from the point. So don't go for the point. Go inward a little bit on this mesh and let's see what happens. Notice that stays linear. Hit undo. I'm going to pick somewhere in sight and again in between the points. Somewhere in between the points. Stays linear. And undo. Now this time I'm going to make this, I'm going to leave this one alone. I'm going to make the first one concave law. So concave. Let's see what happens when I pull on this mesh. Notice how it goes concave. Hit undo. This time I'm going to pick all points, select all points. And I'm going to pull from this mesh. Let's see what happens. I have one set to concave, one to linear. Let's see what happens. So we have concave. Notice how we get a concave shape. And in the other direction, it goes linear. Okay, let me hit undo. Select all points once again. This time I'll pick the corner. Notice it gives us concave. In both directions, the U and the V direction. Let me hit undo. And this time I'm going to go slightly inward from the point, just slightly inward, and pull on it. Notice that our diffusion is concave, but in this direction, it's linear. Along this direction is linear, and also the mesh going in the same direction are linear. All right, let me change it up. I'm going to make this one convex. Notice how we went from concave to convex, while the other one stays linear, the other direction. So that's the cross diffusion. Let's say I wanted to make the cross diffusion concave. Don't blink. There it is. So in this direction, it's going concave, while in this direction, it's going convex. Right? So let's change the convex to Bell law. Okay, so Bell law, don't blink, 3, 2, 1, selected. So now this one, all these here follow the bell shape, while the other, the opposite, or I shouldn't say the opposite direction, but the cross direction stays concave. All right, so let me just go over a few more of the options. I'm going to hit undo a few times, go back to flat, and let me go back to control or to points only, deselect all points, and I'll just go back to constant. All right, so I'm just going to randomly pick on points and just pull on them, or I can pick on mesh and shape it. So I'm pulling in the Z direction. Let me go ahead and go tangent to surface. My mistake, tangent to surface. And let me pick points only. Deselect points. And let me go normal. All right, so I want to introduce you to symmetry. So for symmetry, pick a plane. So I'm going to pick the, I think it's the YZ plane. So I'm going to go to symmetry, click inside, and I'm going to pick the ZX plane. So I'll pick the ZX plane, selected. And I'm going to select all points. And notice it makes everything symmetrical, all the points symmetrical about our ZX plane. Now let me pick the other plane, the YZ plane. Notice now it makes everything symmetrical about the YZ plane. So this comes in handy if you're working on a concept car, for example. Maybe you're working on the rooftop or the hood of the vehicle. This comes in handy. All right, let's go to blend. But before I go to blend, let me do some crazy stuff and just pull in different directions. So it's going to look very chaotic. What I'm doing, I'm just pulling on points. And they seem to be going all over the place. Let me also pull on some on the mesh. And you can see it's just gone all over the place. So if I was to go to blend, it's going to try and organize or straighten out the mesh. So right now it just looks like it's going all over the place. So if I go to blend, it tries to, or it is straightening out our mesh, as you can see. All right, and the last thing I want to cover is smooth. So when you have a surface going all over the place and you want to smooth out the surface, we can go to smooth. We can increase the intensity here. Let's see if we leave it at 0.50 what happens. So let's keep an eye on the surface. And let's smooth. And it's smoothing out the surface, trying to clean it up. Let's increase the intensity and click on it. So what it's doing is smoothing out the surface, trying to clean it up. And I think we reached our limit. Let me go to select all points, smooth. There it is, select all points, smooth, smooth it out. Okay, I think you got the idea. Alright, so this is the end of this video, and I'll see you in the next one.